Sushruta for NEET is now available on the Google Play Store. Try it out for free.
So, hello students, good evening. If you remember in our last class, we have studied about the two laws of electrolysis, and those laws were given by Faraday, and we call those two laws as Faraday's first law of electrolysis and Faraday's second law of electrolysis. And these laws are very important, and quite often the questions are asked in IITJ and even in NEET as well. The thing is, if you go into the concepts in reality, even in a further deeper, you will understand this Faraday's law in terms of the number of equivalents. That is more easily to be understandable. And the number of equivalents, to understand the number of equivalents, I explained it earlier, you have to understand what is the equivalent weight. And there we also know the law of chemical equivalence. And what is the law of chemical equivalence? If a chemical reaction is happening, all the substances that react, they react in the proportion 1:1 proportion of their equivalent weights, or the number of equivalents. So one equivalent of one substance will react with one equivalent of another substance in all the chemical reactions. In terms of mole, what we see, when we look at the stoichiometry, we see 1 mole of particular substance react with some other number of moles of another substance to produce some other number of moles of the product or set of products. This, like for example, if you look at the ammonia, N2 plus 3H2 gives 2NH3. This we know. So one nitrogen molecule or 1 mole of nitrogen reacts with 3 moles of hydrogen to produce 2 moles of ammonia. This is what we know. But when you go by the law of equivalence, you will see that one equivalent of hydrogen reacts with one equivalent of nitrogen to produce one equivalent of ammonia. So substances, they react in the same number of equivalents, and also the products are produced in the same number of equivalents. If you talk about the electrons, 1 mole of electron is equal to 1 equivalent of electrons. And 1 mole of electron, again I am saying, is equal to 1 equivalent of electrons. And 1 equivalent of electrons or 1 mole of electrons, what does it mean? How much charge it will have? And that we know, I have explained earlier, it is equal to the Faraday's constant. And that means 1 farad charge. And that 1 farad charge is roughly equal to 96500 coulomb. If you go more precisely, this value is 96487. However, this value, the last 3 terms, they are debatable, because up to what place of the decimal you take the electronic charge. If you, based on that, this value slightly may change. So one approximated value one can consider 96,500 coulomb as as a net charge on 1 mole of electrons. And the net charge on 1 mole of electrons is also equal to net charge on 1 equivalent of electrons. And 1 equivalent of electrons, if you remember, I also said that it depends, number of moles is equal to number of equivalents is equal to number of moles into certain a factor, a number, an integer, one number you can consider. It is mostly an integer, and that integer we call the valency factor. And for electron, it is the electronic charge. There is only one charge, so the valency factor is 1, and thus number of equivalents is also equal to the number of moles. And why I am explaining this? Because this concept is very important, and because the Faraday's law, if you go anywhere, they are very important. And now, once you know the equivalents, so 1 equivalent of electrons, while you provide electricity during an electrolysis process, whether it is the electrodeposition of metal or some any other process, or the liberation of certain gases or something. So what we or sometimes also what we do also the purification of metals. Like for example, we have seen the copper. We use impure copper as anode, and we then use electricity, and pure copper is deposited at the cathode. So these are the areas where this process is very useful. And so what we know, if you use 1 mole of electrons, so 1 mole of electrons, if you use 1 equivalent of a particular portion of the electrolyte, whether it is the positive portion or the negative portion, will react with that, and thus 1 equivalent of metal will be deposited, or the 1 equivalent of the gas will be liberated, or whatever, 1 equivalent of metal will go into the electrolyte if the oxidation is happening at the anode. Like the case of the metals, it gets dissolved on the when you use active electrodes, particular active anode. And thus these laws are there, this law, and here the number of one equivalent, if you use same amount of electricity, so the number of equivalents of electron will be same, and the number of equivalents of electrons will be same. So the same number of equivalents of different metals will be deposited, and same number of equivalents of different metals will be deposited. So their mass will also, we know the mass is proportional to the number of moles, and number of moles is proportional to the number of equivalents, because number of equivalents into certain factor, certain integer is what the number of moles. So mass is directly proportional to the equivalent weight, and so thus if you use same amount of electricity for two different metals, so m1 divided by m2 will be equal to equivalent weight of first metal divided by equivalent weight of the second metal. This, I think, law is very clear, and I tried to explain it earlier as well. So the equivalent weight, the definition we defined, the equivalent weight of an electrolyte is what? The molar mass divided by valency factor, and the valency factor in the case of electrochemical reactions, how do we know? We find out how many moles of electrons or how many equivalents of electron is required for the deposition or for the reduction of the metal or the oxidation of any reduction or oxidation purposes for per mole of a particular substance. For the gas, hydrogen gas, what we need? For 1 mole of hydrogen, to produce 1 mole of hydrogen, we need 2 moles or 2 equivalents of electrons, because number of moles of electrons and equivalents are same, as I said. So the valency factor here will be 2. So the molar mass of hydrogen is 2 divided by 1. So the equivalent weight of hydrogen will be 1. The molar mass 2 divided by 2, because the valency factor is 2. Similar to the equivalent weight, we have also defined equivalent volume, and the equivalent volume is what? Molar volume for a gas divided by valency factor. And molar volume, we know for gases, if they are at STP, usually 22.2 liter, divided by 2 if you consider the hydrogen, that valency factor is 2, and so the equivalent volume of hydrogen is 11.2. For the oxygen, we have seen oxygen, we get oxygen from oxides when oxygen is in -2 oxidation state in the form of OH- hydroxyl ions. And you can just consider even the hydroxyl ions, oxygen is in -2 oxidation state, in the form of oxide. And thus from -2, 1 oxygen from -2 becomes 2 oxygen. So actually 2 into 2 O2 minus becomes O2. And thus 4 electrons are required to produce 1 mole of oxygen. And thus the valency factor for oxygen is 4. And that's what the things are there. Now there are many, I think, quite a huge number of numerical problems I have, like these numerical problems I have actually explained. We have tried to solve it. Now, just some common things, some common facts about the electrolysis. The electricity is carried out through the solution of an electrolyte by migration of ions. This is the simple, although simple but important thing. The migration of ions take place, because that we know once you just add battery to 2 different electrodes dipped into an electrolyte solution. Once you just means what using battery, we are just creating a potential difference between 2 electrodes, and once that happens, so we add negative polarity of the battery to the cathode and positive polarity with the anode in electrolytic cell, or just opposite. So the electrolytic cell, negative pole, so the negative polarity is given to cathode, so cations will move there, because cations, the electricity positive electrode is there, they will be attracted and will be moving there, and they will also be repelled by the positive electrode, which is anode. And the anions will be moving towards the anode, because they acquire negative polarity, attracted, and they will also be repelled by the negative cathode. And so the migration of ions take place. So ion moves toward positively charged electrodes at different speeds. This is what I have just explained. And different speeds, why the different speeds? Because the weight, the mass of all the ions will be different, and also they may have different charges, and based on the charge they will experience the force, the electrostatic force, and the based on the force divided by their mass will be the acceleration, and thus their migration, their speed will be different. And acceleration, we know force, even if the force is constant and they have different masses, so the acceleration will be different, so they will acquire different speeds. And that is there, depends on the many things, like one factor is hydration as well. So during electrolysis, ions are discharged or liberated in equivalent amounts at the two electrodes, no matter what their relative speed is. So what does it mean? Means, so if one equivalent of ion is deposited at the cathode, the A1 equivalent will be dissolved at the anode. This is what does it doesn't depend on the migration of ions, and this is what, because of the Faraday's law, we have also seen. The concentration of electrolyte changes around the electrode due to difference in speed of ions, and this is what the different ions have different speeds, so the concentration of electrolytes will not be constant once we start the processing of this electrolysis process. So it will not be constant. Loss of concentration around any electrode is proportional to the speed of the ion that moves away from the electrodes. Very simple thing, and thus based on that, this formula one can also remember, and this is also common sense formula, and sometimes you may use it in the numerical problem. So loss around anode divided by loss around cathode, loss of ions, means is equal to speed of cation divided by speed of anion. So speed of cation means what? Cation will move from anode to cathode because cathode is has obtained negative polarity, so it will be attracted. So from the anode to cathode, cations will move, and from cathode to anode, anions will be moving, and that's why this speed of cation divided by speed of anion is given. So this relation is valid only when the discharged ions do not react with the electrodes. This point is important, and usually in your syllabus, the only the thing is that the active electrodes are there, like the purification of metals. Other than that, usually we use the inert electrodes. But when the ions combine with the material of the electrode, the concentration around the electrode shows an increase. This is not very important point, but this is a common sense thing. Now let us look into the batteries. Although they are mostly informative, most of the information are given there. Very few things are there to just understand, that I'll try to explain. And battery, if you remember your physics class, it is defined as a collection of different cells in the series. Means if the different more than one cell or two or more than two cells, if they are connected in a series, that is called, that assembly we call as battery. So any battery, and the chemistry we also call cells we also call as a battery. So we don't actually recognize or make much differences between them, so sometimes they are used synonymously. So any battery or cell is basically a galvanic cell. So when it is talked about the battery, just think that it's a galvanic cell. And what is a galvanic cell? We have seen it is a type of an electrochemical cell which we use to get electricity, to convert chemical energy into the electrical energy. And what the chemical energy, the free energy, the spontaneous reactions, whatever the energy that might be released during a spontaneous chemical change, that energy we use to produce electricity. Where the chemical energy of the redox reaction is converted into the electrical energy. So the battery is what? It's a galvanic cell where chemical energy of the redox reaction is converted into electrical energy. For a battery to be of practical use, it should be reasonably light. This is what we know, because we also have to carry the battery. And if it is light, that will be very useful for us, and that is transportation, other things, that will be easy. And it should also be compact, and its voltage should not vary appreciably during the use. And we know why, because if the voltage will change appreciably during the use, then sometimes when the voltage is high, then what acceleration, other things, suppose you want to drive a bike based on the battery, and if its voltage is not constant, so what will you initially, if the voltage is very high, even if the slight change in the accelerator, the speed will be more, and if the battery is low, you will affect it differently. So you have to put too much acceleration, and this way you may not be able to cope up with this a bike or any motor vehicle. Similarly, the watches and other places we also use batteries, and if the voltage is not constant, it will not be of any use. And thus, so what it means, so its voltage should also not vary. The voltage of battery should not vary appreciably during its use. So there are primarily two types of battery, and two types of battery means the primary battery and the secondary battery we use. So primary battery or batteries and secondary batteries. Primary batteries means just simply thing, means it's a use and throw type of battery. Use just take electricity, use this at once, and once it is already totally exhausted, you have to throw this battery. And this means there's a primary battery and secondary battery is the rechargeable battery. So the battery which is rechargeable we call secondary battery. This is a definition. And non-rechargeable batteries are primary battery, like the dry cell, the Leclanche cell that we use in torches and many other places as well. So those are primary batteries. Secondary battery, lead storage battery that we use in inverters and even the automobiles, those are lead storage battery and secondary battery. We can recharge them, and once they are recharged, we can further use them in the other processes. The secondary battery, the battery that is there in your laptop, in the mobile, they are all secondary batteries because they are rechargeable. So let us look into the primary batteries. In this type of battery or the cell, the reaction occurs only once. So once means the reaction happens once, it happens in one direction, once, and the reaction, all the reactants are exhausted, used once, further chemical reaction will not happen, and so it will of no use. And once the chemicals or the reactants are consumed, further reaction is not possible, and this is what a very simple thing. Thus, after use over a period of time, battery becomes dead and cannot be reused again. So these primary batteries cannot be reused again. They are not rechargeable. And that is, it cannot be regenerated by reversing the current flow through the cell using an external direct current source of the electrical energy. The most common example of this type of primary batteries is dry cell, or we also call Leclanche cell after its discoverer. So Leclanche was discoverer of the primary battery, or the actually inventor, one can say inventor, which is used commonly in the transistors and clocks. So transistor, clocks, the torches, we earlier, if you remember the earlier torches we used, they were all, now the torches are also coming with the rechargeable batteries, but earlier in my childhood I have used torches with the dry cell, and those dry cells which are the primary battery. So the dry cells or Leclanche cell, just common the structure inside it is like this. So that there what we see, there's a cathode which is made up of the carbon mostly, and there's a metal cap. Let us see, the container of the dry cell is made up of zinc. So this zinc container is there. So zinc container, which also serves as anode. So this cathode is made up of carbon. So the zinc, that is the container, it also behaves as anode. So zinc is the anode which makes this container, and the cathode is made up of carbon, the graphite. This is the graphite which is the cathode in the center of this shell, and which is surrounded by powdered magnesium dioxide and carbon. Carbon, again, what is the carbon? It can take in the form of graphite. Mostly we take all the coke, because the coke, graphites are all allotropes of carbon. This diamond is also one of the allotropes of carbon, but that we do not use. So because it will be very costly, and also breaking this into different carbon atoms will be difficult, because the carbon-carbon bond in diamond is very strong. And so and this zinc container is lined with the porous papers. So zinc container is lined with the porous papers, and this porous papers, why porous papers? Because so that the ions can also move, the electrons can also move. So a moist mixture of ammonium chloride, manganese dioxide, zinc chloride, and porous inert filter occupy the space between zinc container and carbon rod. So what we see here, this is the zinc container, and in zinc container, this is the carbon rod, the graphite rod, the metal cap you might have seen, metal cap, and this terminal, this is what the cathode is negative. So what we see in the galvanic cell, so dry cell, also a galvanic cell, there the cathode has negative polarity and anode has positive polarity. Sorry, anode has negative polarity and cathode has positive polarity. This way, see in the electrolytic cell, this is just opposite happens. So again I say, because I made a mistake, so cathode the anode will be given the negative polarity. It will have negative polarity because at anode oxidation will take place, and so ion will move into the electrolyte solution. The electron will be there at that. anode, so anode will acquire negative charge, so negative polarity it will have, and the cathode will have similarly the positive polarity. And the graphite is, this is what the graphite MnO2 and carbon is there inside in the middle. This the paste of ammonium chloride, zinc chloride is already there between this, the porous material, and this is the zinc container as you can see here, which is anode, and the cathode is the graphite, and this is a positive terminal. This is called a negative terminal, negative pole of the battery. This is positive pole, negative pole. So a moist mixture, this I have seen, of ammonium chloride, this is ammonium NH4Cl, and manganese dioxide MnO2, zinc chloride ZnCl2, and porous inert filter occupy the space between zinc container and the carbon rod. These spaces, and the electrode reactions are complex, but they can be written approximately as follows. And because these kind of things, until unless you don't break a dry cell, it will be a bit difficult to understand. So you have to remember some of these informations, because then you have to do this thing is a practical thing. So anode reaction, what will anode, what we know at anode, what happens in the galvanic cell or any other electrochemical cell, even the electrolytic cell, at anode always the oxidation will happen, and the anode, what is there? It is zinc. So zinc will be what? It will be oxidized into zinc ion plus 2 electrons on zinc ion. And at the cathode, what reaction will be happening? And the cathode, what we know, this cathode is of the, this is the electrode, carbon electrode, the graphite electrode is provides surface. Here the reaction that takes place is the manganese dioxide, it accepts electron that is released at the anode from the oxidation of zinc ion, and the ammonium ion that is there in the electrolyte, that is between the ammonium ion, and it finally forms MnOH plus ammonia. This 2NH4 plus, what we know, this is this plus 2 electron, it gives, so ammonium ion, when it accepts 1 electron, it forms ammonia. So 2 ammonium ions, when they accept 2 electrons, they will form 2 molecules of ammonia and 1 hydrogen molecule. This is what we see. And MnO2 plus hydrogen, MnO2 plus hydrogen, because this net reaction, the cathodic reaction, one can break it into 2 parts. And what are those 2 parts? So ammonia accept electrons, so 2 electrons are here, so 2 ammonium ions accept these 2 electrons, and they will be converted into ammonia plus hydrogen gas. Says ammonia gas, 2 molecules of ammonia and 1 molecule of hydrogen. And this MnO2, it reacts with hydrogen to form MnOOH twice. And what we know, the addition of hydrogen is also a reduction process. Or what else you can do, you just find out the oxidation number of manganese, it is +4 here, and in this case it will be +2 from this oxide, and OH, this is OH minus, +1 from this, so manganese here is in +3 oxidation state. So this is a reduction process, and the net reaction, if you just do this, hydrogen will be cancelled out. So this is the net reaction, the cathode reaction that we see. So ammonia produced at the cathode, see this ammonia is produced at the cathode, combines with the zinc ions, and these zinc ions, the zinc ions that are formed at anode, to form a complex ion, and this complex ion is what? ZnNH34, and so the 2 plus charge plus net 2 plus charge will be there on this complex. So zinc 2 plus ion, so zinc ion reacts with 4 ammonia, so 4 ammonia will coordinate with the zinc, and zinc will form zinc tetraamine complex. So tetraamine zinc 2 complex, and zinc 2 complex means zinc is in +2 oxidation state, and that +2 oxidation is shown here as a +2 charge, because ammonia is a neutral molecule, each ammonia. So whatever the charge that is given, that will go to the zinc. The cell has potential nearly, so this cell has potential nearly of 1.5 volt. This is what we know. Another primary cell that is of very importance is the mercury cell, and this mercury cells we use in watches and hearing aids. And this mercury cell is suitable for low current devices like the hearing aids, watches, etc. It consists of zinc mercury amalgam as anode. So zinc mercury amalgam we use as anode. Zinc mercury amalgam is what? It's a kind of, it's a metal, Lloyd and metal means sorry, I am forgetting that concept. So zinc mercury amalgam is what we use here as anode, and a paste of HgO and carbon as the cathode. And mm, this is the anode. This anode is what? This is the zinc mercury amalgam, and this anode cap is provided so that it is covered, and this and this anode is separated by a separator, and the gasket is there, and and another portion is the cathode. So what we see, there are basically two compartments, two different places, and their side there is a separator is there, and this separator must be porous so that ions can move from this part to that part, and is a cell can. So the electrode reaction for the cell are given here, and the electrolyte what we use here is the paste of KOH and ZNO. So KOH, the potassium hydroxide, and the zinc oxide, they are electrolyte. The mixture of what? Zinc oxide and potassium hydroxide, KOH and ZNO, are used as electrolyte, and HgO and carbon as cathode. So HgO, mercury 2 oxide, and carbon as cathode is be used as cathode. And the net reaction is the electrode reaction for the cell is this. So at anode, what happens? The zinc again. So at anode, what will the zinc is there, and zinc another other than zinc, what is the mercury is also there. But what we know, the zinc mercury amalgam mostly what the zinc is reactive. So zinc will react. So zinc Hg plus 2H minus. So zinc will react from the this zinc will react up to form zinc oxide plus water plus 2 electron. So at anode we may not need to this write this Hg. So what we use zinc plus 2H minus, and this 2H minus what we see H2O, and so this ZNO. And this reaction we can see also it is balanced by charge wise and the atom wise as well. One zinc here, two oxygen here, two oxygen atoms here, one oxygen, two oxygen atoms, and two hydrogen, so two hydrogen here. So this is the reaction that take place at the anode. Here in again at anode, zinc will be oxidized even in the mercury cell, which use mercury zinc mercury as amalgam as anode. So zinc will be oxidized to form zinc oxide, and 2OH minus. This OH minus that comes from the electrolyte that you can see here, the KOH. So this KOH, OH minus ions will react with the zinc to form zinc oxide plus water plus 2 electron. At the cathode, and at the cathode, what is the cathode is made up of? Cathode is made up of mercury 2 oxide and carbon. So the cathode, what happens, this mercury 2 oxide, it reacts with water molecule, that is produced here, water molecules plus 2 electron, the electron that are released here. So these two will move to the cathode, and there they will react with the HgO to form mercury liquid plus 2OH minus ion. This is mercury liquid. This is not mercury 1. You should not get confused, because if the mercury 1 is there, we have to write some other thing as well. Maybe Hg2O or something like this. So this is mercury liquid, though it looks like a Roman letter 1 as well. In the capital letter is I, but this is L I have written, so liquid. So at cathode, what happens? HgO reacts with water and 2 electron, and so mercury is reduced here to mercury liquid. That means the mercury metal, and its standard form is what? The liquid that we know, plus 2OH minus ions. And if you add these two reactions, the net reaction, what will have? 2OH minus ions, this will be cancelled, 2 electrons will be cancelled. So what we get, the net reaction is Zn, it will be mercury amalgam mostly. So mercury, this will not go into the reaction. You should remember here also I removed, but here it is the mostly zinc plus HgO, it gives ZnO solid plus Hg. So in your NCERT book, this is written as ZnHg, so you should not ideally write it as the cell reaction. So Zn plus HgO solid, it gives ZnO solid plus Hg liquid. This is the net reaction. The cell potential in this case of mercury cell is approximately 1.35 volt and remains constant during its life. as the overall reaction does not involve any ion in solution. And why this thing is very important, what we know in the electrogalvanic cell, what we see the Nernst equation. And the Nernst equation, if you remember, we also see the ln, the value of the means the concentration of the product ion, the ions that is there in the product divided by concentration of the ions in the reactant, and means the electrolyte that particularly. So the thing is, if the concentration of those ions, because once the cell reaction starts happening, the concentration of the electrolyte will vary, and the concentration of electrolyte will vary, so the cell reaction, the value of E will also change. So that is why Nernst equation is given: E cell is equal to E naught cell minus RT divided by NF ln concentration of the product ion, the electrolyte divided by concentration of the, that is what you know, the reactant particularly. And that's why, and in this scale, this case, the particularly the mercury cell, what you see here in the net reaction, there is no involvement of any ion. If any ion is not involved, so because the any ion is not involved, so the concentration of the E cell will not depend on the concentration of ions. It will only depend on the what, RT divided by NF. And RT divided by NF, they are all constant, and so the E cell will also be constant for such cells of the mercury cell. Secondary battery of the voltaic cell, let us look at the example is the lead storage battery. So the cell in which original reactants are regenerated by passing direct current in opposite direction from external source so that it can be used again. That is, the cell that can be recharged is also called secondary cell. The cell which is, it can be recharged, which are rechargeable, the secondary cell or secondary battery. A good secondary cell can undergo a large number of discharging and charging cycles, and the one cycle, what we call the large number, as I said, the large number of charging and discharging cycle, and this we call the discharge cycle of the battery, or we also call the cycle life of the battery. So how many charge and discharge cycle it will complete during its entire existence, where it can be workable in the workable condition, this we call the cycle life of the battery or the discharge cycle of the battery. This important, this concept, this term is also used for the capacitors or the supercapacitors sometimes. So the most important secondary cell is the lead storage battery, the commonly used in automobiles and inverters. The lead storage battery, if you can see here the figure, the structure of the lead storage battery. Here the lead plates are used as anode, and lead oxide is used as cathode, and the 38% sulfuric acid is used as electrolyte. The 38% sulfuric acid, so if you remember, sometimes we say that the water of this battery is dried up, so we use their battery, or sometimes water we also add there. So this is the negative plates, lead grids filled with the spongy lead. So this is spongy lead, the lead metal, and the positive plates with the lead grids filled with the PbO2. The negative plate, if I am saying negative plate, what does it mean? Simply what polarity in the galvanic cell anode gets? The negative polarity. So anode, so what does it mean? From here itself I can get that the lead grids are used as anode, and the positive plates are PbO2. So positive plates PbO2 is what? It is used as cathode in this. And you can see there are many such plates parallel to each other. So one can consider simply as one part as one cell. So there are many such cells there. So thus it can be called as a battery. So lead storage battery consists of group of lead plates which act as anode, bearing compressed spongy lead alternating with a group of lead plates bearing lead oxide. So what you see, spongy lead, and then this, after this alternatingly PbO2 plate is used here. Then after this PbO2 lead, spongy lead plate is used here. So this alternatingly we use these things. And so these plates are immersed in a solution of about 38% sulfuric acid, which act as an electrolyte. When the cell discharges, it operates as a voltaic cell, and this is what we know. The spongy lead is oxidized to lead 2 plus ions, and lead plates acquire a negative charge, and thus that is why the lead plates, the negative plates, as it is written here, the negative plates as the plate lead grids filled with the spongy lead, because lead is oxidized into lead 2 plus ions plus 2 electrons, and the electrons are there, so it will have negative charge, and this precipitation reaction will also take place. This is the anodic reaction. Anodic reaction means the oxidation of lead to lead 2 plus, and lead 2 plus is there, and what we know in the electrolyte sulfate ions are there. So this lead 2 plus ions plus react with or combine with sulfate ions to form lead sulfate, and lead sulfate we know it's a solid. So Pb2 plus ions combine with sulfate ions to form insoluble lead sulfate. So insoluble lead sulfate is formed, which begins to coat lead electrodes. So now it begins to coat the lead electrodes, and once it starts coating the lead electrodes, what happens after a certain time, lead electrodes will not be exposed to the outer layer of the electrolyte, and so its oxidation will not take place. And so once after a certain time, it will stop giving energy because oxidation will not take place. So you have to reverse this reaction so that lead sulfate again goes into the form of this Pb lead and the sulfate ions, and that is what we use by electricity to charge them. This is the charging cycle that we do. So the electrons that are produced here at the anode because of the oxidation of lead are utilized in the reduction of lead oxide. And this cathodic reaction, what we see, the PbO2 plus 4H plus 2 electron, it gives Pb2 plus 2H2O. And this 4H plus, we know this H plus we obtained from sulfuric acid, and H plus are required here. So 4H plus 2 electrons. And so what we see, 4H plus will be given by 2 molecules of sulfuric acid. One sulfate ion we have already used here, so one another sulfate ion will be free, and that sulfate ion here again Pb2 plus is formed, and Pb2 plus is formed, and that Pb2 plus will combine with the another sulfate ion to form PbSO4. So here again PbSO4 will be formed even at the cathodic because of the cathodic reaction. What is important to understand here is, here both the cases lead 2 plus ions are formed. So how will we know whether which is oxidation and which is reduction? Here you can simply see the oxidation number from 0 to 2 plus. So this is oxidation in the case of cathodic reaction, where we use lead 4 oxide. This is lead 4 oxide, PbO2. This is oxide. Each oxygen has 2 negative charge, 2 oxygen ions. So 2 means 2 oxide ions we call. So 2 into minus 2, 4 minus some charge, minus 4 charge, or minus 4 charge is balanced by 1 atom of lead. Thus lead is in plus 4 oxidation state. So lead from plus 4 oxidation state has gone to plus 2 oxidation state. It means lead is reduced here. So lead has been reduced, so this is the reduction reaction, and now the lead produced will combine with the sulfate again to form PbSO4. So overall cell reaction, what we obtain here is, you can just add these two reactions to obtain the overall cell reaction. So what we see here, Pb plus PbO2 plus 4H plus 2 SO4, 1 SO4 here and 1 SO4 2 minus, gives 2 PbSO4 plus 2 H2O. And so 2 lead sulfate molecules will be formed plus 2 water molecules. And this E cell for this lead storage battery is 2.041 volt. When a potential slightly greater than potential of battery is applied in opposite direction, the battery can be recharged. And so once a slightly higher potential in the opposite direction, once you provide what you get, the cell will be recharged. And how the recharging of this cell will happen? The reaction, the non-spontaneous reaction will take place. And a non-spontaneous reaction that we see in the case of this will the electrolytic process. The reaction will be happening in the opposite direction. In the forward direction, the reaction was spontaneous. It has potential to go in that direction. Now the reaction, if you want to reverse that reaction, and that reversing that reaction is not feasible until unless you don't provide electricity or the electron source for that reaction to take place, and the electricity we provide. So lead sulfate plus 2 water molecules, these water molecules which are here will now be converted into Pb plus PbO2 plus 2H2SO4, and this kind of reaction. This is what? This is 2H2SO4 actually. 4H plus 2SO4 minus ions means it is 2H2SO4 molecules. So in place of 4H plus 2SO4, you can also write here plus Pb plus PbO2 plus 2H2SO4 gives 2 PbSO4 plus water. And just a opposite reaction, the reverse reaction will take place, and thus the charging, this we call the charge, so charging of the battery or the latest storage battery. After many repeated charge discharge cycles, some of the lead sulfate falls to the bottom of the container. And once it falls to the bottom of the container, the sulfuric acid concentration remains low and the battery cannot be recharged fully. And thus we call the battery is now of no use and we replace the battery. So another important secondary cell is the nickel cadmium cell. Nickel cadmium cell is also important and it is being used in the toys and even and even in some other like the remotes and other places as well, and so that these batteries are also rechargeable. So nickel cadmium battery or cells are also rechargeable, which has longer life than the latest storage cell, but more expensive to manufacture because nickel and cadmium are used. Cadmium is comparatively a costly metal. So a rechargeable nickel cadmium cell is a jelly roll arrangement and separated by a layer soaked in moist sodium or potassium hydroxide. The sodium or potassium hydroxide is used as an electrolyte, and what we see the jelly-like structure. So the cathode and anode, they're jellies, and these jellies are parallelly arranged with each other and so in the rolled form. So a rechargeable, again, the nickel cadmium cell is a jelly roll arrangement. So this you can see here, just broken here, the jelly roll arrangement, which are separated by a layer of soaked in moist sodium or potassium hydroxide. It uses metallic cadmium and nickel oxide hydroxide as, so this nickel hydroxide, not oxide. So it uses metallic cadmium and nickel hydroxide as the electrodes. The overall reaction that we see in the case of nickel cadmium cell is this cadmium plus 2 NiOH thrice. So nickel here is in plus 3 oxidation state. You can find out here because one OH, this is OH minus ion. So this is nickel is in plus 3 oxidation state. And the cadmium here is in the form of the solid metal. It in 0 oxidation state. So the cadmium, it becomes cadmium oxide. And so cadmium oxide, so this is cadmium is oxidized and the cadmium is oxidized. It means the cadmium is used here as an anode. So what is the cadmium? So cadmium is used as anode here in this case, and nickel hydroxide is working as cathode because nickel hydroxide is being reduced here. So nickel from plus 3 oxidation state is converted into plus 2 oxidation state, nickel dihydroxide. You can see here, and so NiOH twice, nickel is in plus 2 oxidation state plus water molecule. This is the net reaction that we see in the case of nickel cadmium cell. So a fast and even discharge of electrical energy take place. It is most ordinarily used in toys and small electronic devices such as TV remotes. And you see here, this is the positive plate, the separator, the negative plate. The negative plate is what? It will be the cadmium, which is the anode, and the positive plate will be made up of nickel, OH thrice mostly because this is cathode. And this is how this much is there in your syllabus. Now let us look into the fuel cell. Again, there's only the introduction about these cells is given in your syllabus. So we'll see about the fuel cell. Like also, the electricity, what we know from now is the electricity production by thermal plants is not very efficient, and is one of the major source of pollution that we know. And what we use in the thermal plants, the fossil fuels, the traditional source, the conventional source of the energy. The fossil fuel we use coal, the gas, or the oils, and these plants, what we see, they are not that much efficient. So in thermal plants, the chemical energy first is the chemical energy we first convert into the thermal energy in the form of heat, the heat of combustion that we get because we burn these things, the combustion take place of these fossil fuels. So heat is released, and that heat is used for converting what is used for the boiling water, and this water used for converting this high pressure steam. And so water once boils, the high pressure steam will be produced, and this high pressure steam will use to run turbine, and once that is turbine runs, so we produce electricity. So in thermal plants, I'll say again, the chemical energy which is in the form of heat of the combustion is produced of the fossil fuels, and the fossil fuels, we know they are coal, gas or oils, is first used for converting water into high pressure steam, which is then used to run a turbine to produce electricity. So this is, one can say, roughly a two-step process. First produce heat, burn the fuel, heat will be produced. That heat you use to evaporate water, and that high pressure and water that you produce at a very high pressure steam, and that steam now we use to run turbine to produce electricity. What happens if you just make this process a one-step process? So how, and that is what we people try to do in the fuel cell. So what we see, however, in a galvanic cell, a galvanic cell directly converts chemical energy into electricity and is thus more efficient. So even the heat of combustion, what is that energy? That is the chemical energy. So energy was stored in the form of the chemical bonds in the fossil fuels. We have broken that bonds, and that bonds broken and new bonds have been formed. And because of the new bonds have been formed, what we see, certain production of the energy. The new bonds are more stable bonds, and that energy is being produced. And that means that it is also a spontaneous process in the forward direction. And so the chemical energy we first use convert into the heat, and from the heat energy we further convert heat energy into the electrical energy into the thermal plants. However, in the cells, what we see, we directly convert chemical energy into the electricity. So whether you convert chemical energy to heat and then heat to electricity, or just convert chemical energy directly into the electrical energy, definitely the second process will be more efficient. And cells are now made in which reactants are fed continuously to the electrodes and products are removed continuously from the electrolyte compartment, and till you provide the these materials for the electrodes, this reaction will keep taking place. So galvanic cells that are designed to convert the energy of combustion of fuel like hydrogen, methane, methanol, etc., and the formic acid are directly into the electrical energy are called fuel cells. So fuel cells are what? They are a galvanic cell where, and these galvanic cells are designed to convert energy of combustion of fuels like hydrogen, methane, methanol to directly into the electrical energy. And although we do not combust it, we do not burn these fuels into the fuel cells, but what we do, we directly convert it into the electrical energy by certain tricks. One of the most successful fuel cell is the hydrogen oxygen fuel cell, which uses the reaction of hydrogen with oxygen to form water. So hydrogen reacts with oxygen to form water molecule. This is what we already know. And we know this process is also an exothermic process. So heat energy will be produced, and energy will be produced, and that energy we may convert into the electrical energy. The cell was used for providing electrical power in the Apollo space program. This is an important point. Apollo space program. In space programs, we are using fuel cells now in spacecrafts. So the water vapors produced during the reaction in this Apollo space program. So water molecules, these molecules, once hydrogen reacts with the oxygen, molecules of water will be formed, and these water molecules are produced in the form of steam. And once you condense that steam, what happens? These astronauts also use this water for the drinking purposes. And the hydrogen and oxygen are bubbled through porous. So you just see there are three compartments. This is the top sketch of a fuel cell, three compartments. So from one side the hydrogen is being added, and from the another side oxygen gas is being added, and the water vapor, the steam, one can remove from here. This is the cathode and anode. You can see here there are three compartments, and they are separated by cathode and anode. So finally, and hydrogen and oxygens are bubbled through porous carbon electrodes, and these electrodes are porous and they are made up of carbon. They are porous carbon electrodes into concentrated aqueous hydroxide sodium hydroxide solution. So concentrated sodium hydroxide solution is used as an electrolyte. So finally divided platinum of palladium metals are used as catalyst. So platinum and palladium metals are used as catalysts, which are there into the pores as well. So metals are incorporated into the electrodes for increasing the rate of electrode reactions, because if we are just adding hydrogen, it doesn't mean the hydrogen will directly react with the oxygen. Certain kind of electrode reactions, the electrochemical processes or reactions take place, and those reactions to take place, we also need catalysts. And people are even designing or producing new and new catalysts, even the more efficient catalysts, and research is still going in this area. So what happens, the electrode reactions are given below. The electrode reactions one can roughly write like this. So cathode reaction will be what? The cathode, what we see here, the oxygen is coming from the cathode side. So oxygen, this reaction will be at the cathode. The oxygen gas will react with water plus 4 electrons, and it will produce 4 OH minus ions. Basically, we should have started with the anode reaction. Anodic reaction, the anode reaction, what will happen? Hydrogen gas that is being added here, and this hydrogen gas will react with the 4 OH minus ions. And this OH minus ions, from where this OH minus ions, this is the NaOH that is there in the electrolyte. And the porous, again we use porous cathode and electrode because the ions can move freely through these electrodes. So this 4 OH minus comes from the electrolyte, and this 4 OH minus reacts with the hydrogen and to form 4 water molecules plus 4 electrons, and 4 water molecules plus 4 electrons. So what we see, the oxidation take place here because electrons are released here, and the hydrogen is in zero oxidation state. From 0 to +1 oxidation state it has gone, thus it is oxidized. So the oxidation take place at the anode, the anodic reaction, the oxidation of hydrogen take place, and that we see here, the electron will be produced, and this electron will be used at the cathode, and this electron will actually move through the external circuit from here to here, and here in this way we put the device to use. And so the anodic cathodic reaction, now there is electron, and it will also react with the water molecule to form 4 OH minus ions. So whatever the OH minus ions that were used here, they will now be produced here at the cathode. This is the aqueous, and the cell runs continuously as long as the reactants are supplied. As long as you supply hydrogen and oxygen, particularly, this reaction will keep taking place, and the water molecules will be produced. The water fuel cells produce electricity with an efficiency of about 70% compared to the thermal plants whose efficiency is only about 40%. It's a maximum. The thermal plants have efficiency maximum up to 40%, but fuel cells can have efficiency up to 70%. And if you see here, this a more elaborate diagram, and here you see the hydrogen molecules are added. Hydrogen molecules, once these hydrogen molecules are being added here, some of the hydrogen molecules will not react, so it will be coming out. So unused hydrogen molecules will be coming out, hydrogen gas, and some of the hydrogen molecules will be oxidized, and it will be oxidized into the form of hydrogen. If we know, if it is oxidized, it will be oxidized in the form of H plus and electrons, the protons and electrons. The electron will move through this electrode and here, and so we can run the electrical device here, whatever we use here in the circuit. And the proton, now this proton will be moving through this portion which we call the exchange membrane. This is the membrane, and this membrane, the research is also going on in this area to have the more conducting membrane, so the membrane can easily transport proton from one portion to the another portion of this fuel cell. So these protons will be moving here. So the highly conducting porous material is used, or the proton exchange membrane is used. And the proton exchange membrane, once this proton comes here, the electron will also come here from moving from this through this circuit and from this device. And once electron comes here, the proton also comes here. The electron and proton will now react to form this hydrogen atom, and this hydrogen atom will react with the oxygen atom to form water molecules. And the oxygen is provided from this side. Oxygen is now broken into 2 oxygen atoms here, you can see. So roughly, in the rough sketch, what you see, the oxygen is divided into oxygen atoms. These oxygen atoms will react with the two hydrogen atoms, and which were produced because hydrogen is here oxidized into the form of proton and electron. Electron is used, the movement of electron for the production of electricity or the use of for the running devices, and this proton will move through this proton exchange membrane and reach this side. They will react proton and electron to form hydrogen atom, which will react with oxygen atom to produce water molecules, and so there are cut tremendous progress in the development of new cathode materials. So there are a lot many research and many groups in the world currently involved in this, using this better electrode to find out better electrode, better catalyst for the oxidation of hydrogen, better catalyst for the even the breaking or the reduction of oxygen here. You can say the final net reaction is the reduction of oxygen, although it is shown here in the form of O, it is actually O2 minus. This is O2 minus, 2 electrons will be also used here. So this is not, this is H plus, one can consider this H plus, 2H plus and 2 electrons. These 2 electrons will be accepted by one oxygen atom, so it is O2 minus. So O2 minus will react with 2H plus to form water molecule. So these have been used in automobiles on an experimental basis. And this point I was describing, there occurred tremendous progress in the development of new electrode materials, better catalyst and electrolytes for increasing the efficiency of fuel cells. Even research is going on to have to use to design a better porous material at the proton exchange membrane as well. So fuel cells are pollution free, and in the view of their future importance, a variety of fuel cells have been fabricated and tried. And let us just summarize those points again, because fuel cell is perhaps new for you in the syllabus. The cell consists of 3 compartments separated by porous electrodes, and that we have seen. So 3 compartments having porous electrodes, 1, 2, 3 compartments. Here it is more clear, 3 compartments, and this separated by 2 porous electrodes, anode and cathode. Hydrogen gas is introduced into one compartment and oxygen gas is fed into another compartment. These gases then diffuse slowly through the electrodes and reaches with and react with an electrolyte. And electrolyte is what? NaOH, OKOH, whatever the electrolyte that is in the central compartment. So electrolyte is added in the central compartment with with the proton exchange membrane. And these gases then diffuse. And the electrodes are made up of porous carbon, and electrolyte is a resin containing concentrated aqueous sodium hydroxide solution. Hydrogen is oxidized at anode and oxygen is reduced at cathode, and this is what we have seen. This type of cells are used in spacecrafts. Fuel cells are efficient and pollution free. The overall cell reaction produces water, and that we have also seen. Now this is the final topic of this chapter, the corrosion. And when we talk about the corrosion, you should remember this corrosion is also an electrochemical process. An electrochemical process means it's a redox process, and this we have also seen in the redox chemistry. So corrosion is a what? It's a redox reaction or the electrochemical reaction. So corrosion slowly coats the surfaces of metallic objects with oxides or other salts of the metal. So in the chemistry of S block elements, we have seen the coating of the metal oxides, like particularly magnesium and the beryllium oxides. They do not react more efficiently with the oxygen because very immediately it forms the oxide layer, and it doesn't react with the vapor. And oxide or hydroxide layer, it forms an oxide layer on the surface, and once the oxide layer is formed, it coats that surface, and so further reaction doesn't take place. So corrosion slowly coats the surfaces of metallic objects with oxides or other salts of the metal. That is, when metal are exposed to atmospheric conditions, they react with air or water in the environment to form undesirable compounds. And these undesirable compounds means these compounds we do not want to be formed. And usually these compounds are oxides of the metal or some other salts of the metal like sulfides, also form. This process is called corrosion. Almost all metals except the least active ones like gold, platinum, and palladium are attacked by environment, and the oxygen is there and the moisture is there, and so they undergo corrosion. Other than mostly gold, platinum, and palladium, almost all metals they undergo corrosion. For example, the silver tarnishes. We have seen the black coating on the surface. We might have seen silver becomes black after certain time. Copper develops a green coating. Lead, so silver develops a black coating, copper develops a green coating, lead or stainless steel loses their luster due to corrosion. These things we have already seen, might also have observed. Corrosion causes enormous damage to buildings. And why it causes enormous damage to buildings? Because we know in the buildings or the bridges or the ships or many other useful things, we use steel, and this steel undergo rusting, and once it undergoes rusting, the buildings will be broken, the bridges will also be destroyed, and so these kind of things we see. So corrosion causes enormous damage to buildings, bridges, ships, and many other articles made of iron. And we lose crores of rupees every year on account of corrosion, and thus we don't want iron to be corroded. And thus corrosion is a process of deterioration of a metal as a result of its reaction with air or water. So it's a deterioration of metal. And in the case of iron, corrosion is called rusting. Chemically, rusting is hydrated form of rust is a hydrated form of oxide or iron oxide, iron 3 oxide, which we also call the ferric oxide. So ferric oxide, and if it is hydrated by certain number of water molecules, these water molecules could be any. So Fe2O3 is what the ferric oxide, and if it is there, certain water molecules is there, H2O as the crystallization or something we call the hydrated. This is called the hydrated form, not as the crystallization form. So rusting of iron is generally caused by moisture, carbon dioxide, and oxygen present in the air. How carbon dioxide causes rusting, and the moisture causes rusting, oxygen causes rusting. This thing we will see a bit later. So for the rusting of iron, what is required? Moisture, carbon dioxide, oxygen, they all require, and they are there already in the atmosphere. So rusting takes place only when iron is in contact with the moist air. If iron is not in contact with the moist air, rusting will not take place. Thus, iron does not rust in dry air and in the vacuum. More the reactivity of metal, more will be the possibility of the metal getting corroded. This is what we know, that least reactive metals, they do not get corroded. Most active metals, they will easily get corroded. They will easily react with the oxygen or the moisture or other portions of the atmosphere, and so they will easily be corroded or they deteriorated. They'll be destroyed later. So whatever the devices will make, it will be the devices and other things will be, or the articles will be destroyed. So the impurities help in setting up voltaic cells. So the impurities that is there, it also helps up in the voltaic cells. So voltaic cells means we are talking about now the electrochemical process, that is the corrosion, which increases the speed of corrosion. Presence of electrolytes in water also increases the rate of corrosion, because electrolytes means we know the water contains certain minerals, and those minerals, though in the very small concentration, those minerals can also be used. They are like electrolytes. So presence of CO2 in natural water increases the rusting of iron. The CO2 in natural water, CO2, what does it do in natural water? If the CO2 is there, it will form carbonic acid, and carbonic acid will provide H plus ions, and the H plus ions, it actually increases the rate of the rusting. So in corrosion, a metal is oxidized by loss of electrons to oxygen and formation of oxides. So the metal, what happens? The metal, the pure metal, it oxidizes, and how it will be oxidized? It will be oxidized by losing its electron to oxygens, and the oxygen atom will accept that electron. So the electrons that will be released, and thus the formation of oxide will take place. And the chemistry of corrosion is quite complex, but it may be considered essentially as an electrochemical phenomena. At a particular as I said already said, it's an electrochemical phenomena. Can consider it as, although the rusting is a complex process, but we can roughly write these rusting reactions a certain way. At a particular spot of an object made of iron, oxidation take place and that spot behaves as anode. So what it means, if the iron metal is there and a particular spot, wherever that spot is exposed to water, oxygen and other materials, that may behave, certain portion may behave as anode, and that particular spot, once it behaves as anode, does it will do? It will oxidize metals there, and oxidized metal is the iron there, and the iron will be oxidized into iron 2 plus. So Fe2 plus 4 electrons. So if two iron atoms are involved in the reaction, so two Fe2 plus ions will be formed and 4 electrons will be released. And this E cell one can write as this. This value is minus 0.44 V. This is the reduction potential for iron 2 to iron 0 oxidation state. So this is a standard reduction potential, minus 0.44 volt. Electrons released at the cathode, means this at the anodic spot, particularly the anodic spot where the electrons are produced because of the oxidation of the iron. It moves through the metal, and metal is already there, so it will be conducting so it will conduct electrons, and the electron will move at some another spot. Another spot, it will now react at that particular spot. The iron will react with the oxygen in the presence of H plus ions, and electron will also be involved there. Electrons will also be utilized there, and so the reaction, and that spot we have as a cathodic spot or cathode. So the electrons released at anodic spot move through the metal and go to another spot on the metal and reduce oxygen in the presence of H plus ions. The H plus ions, the hydrogen ion, is available from carbonic acid. Here you can see, formed due to dissolution of carbon dioxide from air into water. So carbon dioxide is already there in the air, and that carbon dioxide will be dissolved. It will dissolve in the water and will form carbonic acid, and this carbonic acid can provide H plus ions. These H plus ions in water may also be available due to dissolution of other acidic oxides from the atmosphere. And what we know, there are many other oxides that are there in the atmosphere as well, like SO2, SO3, N2O3, NO2, N2O5. There are many oxides that are also there, and these oxides, when react with water, they form acids. And so this H plus may also be available from those acids. And this spot where the reduction takes place, means the electron goes and then the water molecules involved and the H plus ions are involved. That particular spot is called the cathode, and this particular spot behaves as cathode, one can say, with the reaction. And this cathode reaction is this. And why the spot with the cathode? Because there is a many cathodes, there may be many cathodes and anodes on the simple metal surface or iron surface. So it is not that one portion and one particular part is of iron behave as cathode and one particular part behave as anode. It's a certain spot, certain area, sometimes cathode and anode. There are many spots which behave as cathodes and anode of the iron. So this spot, at this spot, means that the cathodic spot, the reaction, what reaction will be taking place? It will be the reduction, because that cathode reduction only take place. This we know. The reduction, the oxygen gas and reduction means we have, as I explained earlier, the oxygen will be converted into the oxide, and this oxygen accepts those electrons which were released due to the oxidation of iron. So O2 gas, the oxygen gas, the H plus ions that are made available from the acid, the carbonic acid, or because of the dissolution of some other non-metallic oxides into the water, and this H plus and the 4 electrons that were produced because of the oxidation of 2 iron atoms into 2 Fe plus. So these 4 electrons, then thus this reaction will be taking place. So the water molecules will be formed, and the water molecules are forming. It means oxygen here is in the -2 oxidation state, means in the form of oxide. So oxygen from 0 to -2 oxidation state, it means the reduction reaction. And this reduction reaction in this E naught cell, or in a standard reduction potential for this reaction, this half cell reaction, is 1.23 volt. This is plus 1.23 volt. So the net reaction we can also write. We can simply add these two reactions, the anode half cell reaction and cathode half cell reaction is 4 electrons and 4 electrons. That, oh sorry, this 4 electrons here and 4 electrons here, they will be cancelled out. So the net reaction that we see here is a 2 iron solid plus O2 gas plus 4H plus will produce 2 Fe2 plus aqueous plus 2H2 here. This is in the form of liquid. The E naught cell for this net reaction we can also write, and the formula that we know for the E cathode minus E anode, that formula we use. So E cathode 1.23 minus 0.44 volt, that is given here, and it means minus into minus it will become plus. So 1.23 plus 0.44 volt will be equal to 1.67 volt. The ferrous ions are further oxidized by atmospheric oxygen to ferric ions, which come out as rust in the form of hydrated ferric oxide plus H2O molecules with further production of hydrogen ions. Prevention, and so what will happen, iron will rust, it will be destroyed, and so it is not a desirable thing. So what do we want? We don't want this corrosion to take place or the rusting take place, and the rough diagram is here that is given. So Fe, this is the iron. At particular spot, iron is converted into Fe2 plus, and the Fe2 plus and these electrons that were produced, it will go to somewhere else, and here suppose those electrons are moving here at this place, or it will react with the oxygen to form water molecules and the H plus ions as well, and this H plus ions will be coming as an electrolyte from the water if it is in the contact of the water. And once this thing, the water molecules, whatever the water molecules that are produced here, and so finally the Fe2 plus, and this is Fe2, this Fe2 plus will further react with oxygen to form Fe2O3, and X water molecules also will be there, and that is what the rust deposit. This is also this we call rust, and that will be there as a rust deposit. The several, and as we know, prevention of corrosion is of utmost importance. It not only saves money but also helps in preventing accidents such as bridges collapse or failure of a key component due to corrosion. And so the several methods for protection of metals against corrosion have been developed, and in all those methods the basic idea that has been used is to prevent surface of the metallic object to come in contact with atmosphere. If you prevent the metallic surface to come in contact with atmosphere, so it will not be reacting with oxygen, or not will in the contact of the water or or the water vapor or even H plus ions, so the corrosion will not take place. So what are the particularly few things that we use to prevent the corrosion? The first thing is covering the surface with the paint or by some other chemicals. The painting we usually do, whatever the iron objects are there, we usually paint it, and that painting we do because we want to prevent corrosion of that iron article or iron material. So we paint it, and the bisphenol or the metal oxides we use for the painting. So cover the second method is cover the surface by other metals that are inert or react to save the object. So some metals are inert and react very slowly with the oxygen, so you can just cover that entire metal which can easily undergo corrosion, is the highly reactive metals, with the inert metals. Inert metals will not react with oxygen, only even if it reacts, it will react very slowly with the oxygen and the water or the moisture, and so one can save that surface as well. Or the other thing is to provide a sacrificial electrode of another metal like magnesium or zinc, which are more reactive even than the iron or some other, and which corrodes itself but saves the object. And the example is the galvanizing steel is coated with the zinc, and zinc is a more active metal. So steel, when it is galvanized with the zinc, and where we know the zinc is more active metal, so zinc will be oxidized and not the steel, and so this is how we can also stop corrosion. This chapter is over, and I'll also stop here. I hope it was okay for you. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer.